people that just joined in, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Alrighty. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, DineSafe, Zero Human Interaction Technology for Restaurants. My name is Jerry Chavez and I'll be your moderator. I work on the marketing team here at Tray, and I'm really excited to present to you the next webinar in our series. I wanted to just briefly lay out the agenda for today before we get started. We have Anthony Mera with us, National Client and Sales Director. You might remember from our previous webinars to discuss DineSafe. But first, however, I wanted to introduce you to a very special guest we have here today, Tray's CEO, Ohad Jahasi. Before I hand the mic over to Ohad, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items just before we get started on the presentation. First, I wanted to let everybody know that today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. And we'll be sharing this deck with everybody via email after today as well. And there you can find today's deck and other related content, including our upcoming webinars. And next, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to send them through the chat tab at the bottom of your screen. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. And if we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we will be able to follow up via email and schedule a phone call as well. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming today's speaker, Ohad. Over to you.
Thank you, Jerry. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Ohad Jahasi, and I'm the CEO of Tray. Today, I'm going to share with you some insights on the current state of the industry as it pertains to DineSafe, which is Tray's technology suite enabling zero human interaction at restaurants. So during today's webinar, we're going to cover three areas. Next slide. First, what DineSafe is and its importance both now and in the future. And second, we'll walk you through some actual use cases of the technology. And finally, we'll review the hardware and software components of DineSafe and answer some of the questions that you might have as you consider whether DineSafe is right for you. So why did we create DineSafe? Well, believe it or not, it's been 8 months. I mean, I have to remind myself that it's been 8 months since the pandemic began. And frankly, it feels like a lifetime. The world has changed so much in that time, and we've all been forced to adapt. And, you know, it's not optional either now or going forward. So, of course, our entire industry has changed. Consumer behavior has changed, and our restaurant customers have felt stuck, not knowing exactly how to adapt. And we've heard directly from our restaurant operators as to what their biggest challenges are. So what we did at Tray is refresh a number of our features and reoriented our product development roadmap to come up with an answer to help restaurants survive and thrive post-COVID. And that's DineSafe. Next slide. But before I walk you through our solution for restaurants post-COVID, let's take a quick look at how much restaurant diner behavior has changed. So while we all know that the pandemic has changed behavior dramatically, how exactly has it changed? So first, customers are demanding touchless. So according to a recent survey conducted in the US, 87% of consumers are now using self-checkout, touchless self-checkout, or other frictionless methods to pay for groceries, while less than a third of respondents are ordering groceries online. Now, while this study had to do with the grocery segment, which we also happen to service at Tray, there are two clear takeaways from the study. First, that customers are still paying in person, but when they do pay in person, they overwhelmingly want to pay in ways that don't involve physical contact. So as we all know, COVID and people's response to it is what's driving this behavior change. Now, another study that was done outside of the US, it was a global study, found that 78% have changed the way they pay, and they've increased their touchless forms of payment. So again, these changes are happening not only in the US, but everywhere, and they're likely going to be permanent. So a little surprise, yet another study has shown that the use of contactless is skyrocketing, with 40% of customers using contactless payment options at least 3 times in the past week. And the reason, those surveyed ranked sanitary concerns the highest. And finally, we see all businesses are adapting to these changes. While of course we see the big enterprise players adapting and implementing wide-scale contactless payment options, we found that fully one-third of small businesses globally have either banned cash outright or added contactless payments. Next slide. Now, how do restaurants address this challenge of changing consumer behavior? Well, at Tray, we talk to restaurant operators directly every day, and they've been telling us what their biggest challenges are right now. And the most common challenges by far are, well, first and foremost, just staying open is a challenge. Um, then following that is adapting the restaurant so that it's safe and proving to customers that it's safe. So customers want to feel safe when they're ordering. They want to know that their food is prepared safely and that they can get their food safely, whether they dine in, whether they pick it up or get it delivered. So it boils down to trust, which will determine whether people will spend money at a restaurant. They're looking to restaurants to provide visible solutions to their concerns. Next slide. And to do that, restaurants need to take actions and invest in the technology and infrastructure that addresses their concern and also supports the desire to dine at and order from restaurants. And restaurants that do this will see more demand. And we're already seeing restaurants making these changes, which I'm going to discuss in just a bit. So, so now I want to really introduce DineSafe, which is Tray's flagship offering, which is a complete hardware and software suite that provides customers a zero human interaction dining experience. So actually, at this point, I'm going to stop and turn this over to Anthony Mera, who I want to introduce you to. Anthony leads our sales and client success at Tray. And what he's going to do next is walk you through what the DineSafe experience looks like through a step-by-step flow, and also shows you the customer journey from walking in to placing an order to receiving your food. So please go ahead, Anthony.
Great, thank you, Ohad. And actually, before I jump into that, I wanted to start by showcasing a case study, which really, in some ways, could be considered the initiation of or the genesis of Tray's DineSafe. And so, DineSafe's first deployment is with Brooklyn Dumpling Shop, a budding franchise restaurant concept owned and founded by New York restaurateur Stratus Morfogen of Brooklyn Chop House fame, a very popular restaurant in Manhattan. So Stratus reached out to Tray back in May because his existing point of sale provider that he was otherwise happy with, but they were unwilling to accommodate his unique development needs, I guess, due to strains of COVID. And these needs involved establishing integration between Tray's self-service kiosks with full integration with automated self-sanitizing food lockers and digital menu boards and digital order status boards as well. Tray took on this challenge, stepped up to the task, and the flagship location is launching actually next Tuesday, November 24th in Manhattan's East Village. Brooklyn Dumpling Shop also has aggressive plans for expansion in 2021, and these will include at least 9 DineSafe drive-thrus. DineSafe will help power Brooklyn Dumpling Shop to set the new standard in quick service restaurant safety and efficiency. There won't be any front of house staff, actually. Everything will be fully automated as far as that goes. There'll just be maybe one manager and then some back of house kitchen staff. And orders that are placed will be ready for pickup in no more than 3 minutes. So, kind of the way that I would put it is, thanks to, automation largely powered through DineSafe, Brooklyn Dumpling Shop will have an incredibly low footprint when it comes to staff, when it comes to labor and maintenance. Fulfillment orders will be placed automatically when inventory stock is running low. And this will, as you can imagine, will lower labor requirements for both franchisees as well as corporate. And we really see this as, the future in franchise operations with as minimum wage increases and as we need to be more and more concerned with sanitation. We really are excited about this concept taking off. So with that said, I wanted to go ahead and actually show you the customer journey, something that we mapped out. Now, this is very similar to what a customer that is, let's say, in Manhattan walking into Brooklyn Dumpling Shop would experience. But this is also what we foresee for other restaurants employing DineSafe as well. So to begin, starting in the top left side here at the point of order. Now, I guess first it's important to mention that a customer can place an order before they ever arrive on site. Through Trey's unique online ordering that is fully integrated with our point of sale, they can order ahead by time. They could even order ahead for a larger order, a catering order. They could order days in advance. This is fully configurable by the restaurant. So if you only want day of orders, we can do that. If you want only 4 hours ahead, or you want a minimum window of 1 hour, we can easily set that up. But just keep in mind that we do make it possible for customers to order off premise on site. However, if they're just a walk-in customer and they haven't placed an order, we'll kind of start there. So they'll be able to order contactless, and they can do that a number of different ways. First, they could launch a mobile responsive browser ordering app. They can do this by scanning a QR code. They could also scan a QR code on a self-service kiosk that would launch an app that would then allow them to maneuver the kiosk remote control. Imagine, an Apple TV, or I use an Amazon Fire Stick. You can imagine how you can actually use an app to manipulate the screen. A similar concept to that. Again, the whole idea is giving customers multiple options, multiple ways, depending on what technology they have, to avoid having to touch a screen that's in common use. Now, however, if they either don't want to do that, or aren't savvy enough to do it, or they're just really in a rush, or they don't care, or they have gloves, I'm thinking of different options here, they of course can use the self-service kiosk. So again, the self-service kiosk, important to note, with Trey, they all are glove capable. So if you want to provide gloves for customers to use, they can do that. These devices also can be equipped with antiviral screens. They also can be equipped with a UV light array, which science and research is showing has antimicrobial and antiviral properties. So once the customer places their order, they will then have the option to pay contactless as well. The customer can either enter their credit card information into their phone, or have it pre-saved if they've already placed an order before and have set up a profile through Trey. Or they can use the NFC capable devices and pay with either tap payment, Apple Pay, or Google Pay. And again, this is all enabled through the kiosk terminal. If the customer does not have an NFC capable card, they will have to insert or swipe, but there's many other options for them to avoid having to do so. Next on the phase, once the order is placed and payment is accepted, this will send the order to Trey's proprietary array of kitchen display systems, or as I'll refer to in short as a KDS. These KDS systems, again, as I mentioned, they can be controlled by bump bar, by touchscreen, both of which are glove capable, limiting possible cross-contamination from kitchen staff. The KDS is also important, as we'll see here on the next step, order status tracking. So customers will be able to track the status of their order through either an overhead status monitor, or they'll be able to receive email or text message notifications as their order is being prepared through each stage of the process. So when the staff marks the order as accepted, that will indicate to the customer that their order is being prepared. And when the order is marked complete, that will indicate to the customer that their order is ready. It will send the automatic notification, and will also update on the order status board as well. Now, what you see here for the order ready for pickup, this is just one example. This is highly customizable. I know with Brooklyn Dumpling Shop, we actually have their logo, and it's a much different design. So we have a lot of variety possible there, or customization, I should say. Now, once the order is ready for pickup, you can see here on step 5, you'll see this QR code. That's because once the order is marked ready by the back of house kitchen staff, this will also trigger an automatic email or text message notification, which will provide the customer with an auto-generated QR code with ready for pickup confirmation. This QR code will then be used by the customer to scan at the automated food locker system, and this will pop open the appropriate door or doors containing their order. One thing to mention here, lockers can be set to hot or cold, depending on what type of food item they are. So if you have some hot food and some cold food, they'll be put in, probably 2 different components, unless it's a really big order. And each compartment will self-sanitize after every use. So going back to what Ohad was talking about, trust, We can't always trust that the person that used that locker before us had washed their hands, but if we know that it's being automatically self-sanitized after every use, we can trust the establishment and we can trust the technology. And so these are the kind of things that actually we anticipate restaurants, and I already know for a fact that Brooklyn Dumpling Shop has received a lot of press, and it's something that will actually lend towards marketing, being able to offer and market this as something that your restaurant does. So with that said, I wanted to review some of the key software and hardware components of DineSafe. But before I do that, I guess, Jerry, have we had any questions come in? That might be a good place to stop before we get into the hardware, especially since we've just thrown a lot at everyone.
Jerry, I'm not sure if you're muted.
Yes, thank you. I got one question here. I'll go in order in which they were received. The first question reads, is DineSafe a good fit for full service restaurants, or is it mostly geared for QSR?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. That was one that I was kind of going to allude to or touch upon during the software and hardware review, but I guess I might as well just kind of start with a preface now. So I guess, one important thing to understand about Trey's DineSafe, and I've seen this, and we put out a press release, we've put out some information already, and one thing that I think is important to be clear on is that Trey can offer DineSafe as simple as, let's say, the locker system, the digital menu boards, and then just the phone app, just online ordering. However, Trey is a fully fledged self-service kiosk and point of sale system as well. So we actually work with large enterprise chains, one of which has 4,000 locations nationwide. And again, I'll touch on that in a little bit. But I guess what's unique about Trey is that our self-service kiosk functionality is fully integrated with the point of sale. So whereas a lot of cloud-based systems, maybe their inception was around 2008 or 2009, and they tacked on a kiosk or maybe found a third-party kiosk provider, Trey actually built its kiosk and its point of sale from the ground up in conjunction with one another. So therefore, you can have a fully fledged component of your restaurant that does self-service kiosks. We even have some restaurants, mostly in New York actually, that are kiosk only. They don't actually utilize any cash registers. But we also can have, let's just say we could have DineSafe, and then part of the restaurant would be full service and table service. And then you could have a point of sale that was dedicated towards the DineSafe portion of things, where it was a traditional quick service mode. And then on the other side of the establishment, you would have table service. Each point of sale device or handheld device can be provisioned into full service mode or quick service mode. So obviously, I think, those watching can get a sense seeing this. Definitely makes a lot of sense for quick service, fast food service environments. But there's no reason why, if you're a full service restaurant that's wanting to provide this service, that you couldn't do that as well. And from a sales reporting and inventory standpoint, it would be fully integrated. We just might recommend a slightly smaller footprint, but certainly any restaurant that has a heavy footprint when it comes to takeout and delivery orders could certainly benefit from employing DineSafe.
Great. We got another question that came in. It says, could this integrate into my existing POS, or would I have to replace it?
Another good question. So Trey does have some integrations with some point of sales. Off the top of my head, I know Aloha, Micros, Parbrink, Squirrel, some of the slightly what we call legacy point of sales. If it's another cloud-based point of sale, more likely than not, they're a direct competitor, so we wouldn't have a direct integration. But certainly, if we're leveraging similar reporting tools, we could do that. And of course, we could provide a customized reporting to integrate sales reporting, daily or weekly. So that would be possible. But I would also encourage, it would be worth checking out Trey's functionality as well, because we've really come leaps and bounds in the past 2 years when it comes to the restaurant space.
And last question that came in during the beginning, how long does it take a restaurant to get set up with DineSafe?
Okay, yep. Another good question. So again, if we're thinking about a simple setup, Tray can get online ordering, your menu built, settings configuration set up, and really, as little as 24 to 48 hours, we could get you up and running. What's going to take longer is hardware configuration, shipping, fulfillment. Uh, of course, the locker component is going to take the longest out of anything that we offer from a hardware perspective. That's going to be more along the lines of 8 to 12 weeks. Standard hardware, self-service kiosks, registers would be more like 2 to 3 weeks. But certainly if you were looking at a full suite, we could get you up and running. And then the longest component, the food lockers, we could install and then connect with the existing system in 8 to 12 weeks. But again, we could get you up and running at least with the basics in a very short order here.
Great. And that's all we had for questions right now. But folks, feel free to keep using the chat function and we'll get to them at the end of the session.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jerry. I think that was a good little interlude there. All right, so I wanted to run through and highlight just kind of some of the key components of the engine that really allows Tray to run and power DineSafe and restaurants in this fashion. So as I touched on briefly, the Tray kiosk is unique in that it was built in conjunction with a point of sale. This lends itself to having significantly more functionality than your traditional standalone kiosk. From reporting to menu configuration, all of this is tied together with a full-fledged point of sale and full-fledged point of sale reporting and configuration functionality. A few points to highlight here, getting into the specifics of the kiosk, is that because it's fully integrated with a point of sale, we can limit what menu items appear on the kiosk versus the point of sale. For instance, I've been working with a coffee shop that provides 100 different flavors of coffee syrups, but they don't want that many options on the kiosk just in case they're low on or they're low or out of a certain rare flavor. So they want to limit what's available on the kiosk. Very easy to do with Tray. They can have the full suite of flavors available on the point of sale and a limited option available on the self-service kiosk. Similarly with alcohol, I know for a fact that Brooklyn Dumpling Shop, they are going to be serving alcohol. And so this is something that with just a click of a button, we could make not available on the kiosk, and customers would have to go to a point of sale in order to be ID'd to order alcohol. This also applies to the online ordering component as well. Now, it is important to mention as well that all reporting is, even if you separate menu items out across different modules, reporting treats them as all the same. So you don't have to, you won't end up with double or triple reporting for a given menu item. Next, what I wanted to discuss as well was Tray has very advanced modifier logic when it comes to the self-service kiosk, which lends itself to really being able to allow customers to customize their order. We can allow you to preset the suggested modifier. So let's say with a salad, it comes with a suggested dressing, a suggested cheese, something like that. Very easy to have those preset, but then you can deviate from that as need be. We also can set up flows, like you could imagine Chipotle or something like that, where you build your own bowl. You start with a base, add a certain type of rice, add a certain type of protein. Very easy to do through Tray's self-service functionality. Another thing that's pretty unique when looking at other kiosks is that Tray has location-specific ordering that's fully customizable. So let's say that your establishment is nearby a popular park where people like to congregate. You'd actually allow customers to be able to walk in, place their order on a kiosk, and then indicate that they're actually going to be at the park next door. You'll not only have their contact info through them walking through the kiosk flow, but Tray will actually pull the name of the credit card holder when they conduct the transaction, and therefore you'll have the full name. So it'll be easy to, you could call them, you could text them, or you could call out their name in the park as well, just making it very easy to run food to people versus forcing them to mill around and wait for their order to be picked up. As far as the point of sale goes, again, kind of touched on this briefly with one of the questions that I just answered. But Tray does have full service mode, which would include customizable table layout, which is drag and drop. We can do multiple rooms. We can do preset number of guests for different tabletop amounts. But we also can have a quick service mode as well, which would take you right to the menus available for ordering and skipping over the table flow. So again, we can provision devices very easily. So again, in the scenario where we have a full service component and a DineSafe component, very easy to do with Tray. Next, wanted to touch again upon the online ordering, which I touched upon briefly during the customer journey. Online ordering is fully desktop and mobile responsive. It also can be embedded into a custom app. We have a number of customers doing that. They have a custom app developed, and very quickly, rather than spending X amount of resources and integrating with a point of sale, immediately it can be available through Tray's online ordering that can be embedded into the app. Tray's online ordering also has built-in loyalty and promo code functionality. It provides high resolution images and full suite of modifier controls that you would have available on the kiosk or the point of sale. And in my experience, I've looked at a lot of online ordering platforms. It's really easy to use, even when it comes to very complex modifier groups. Also wanted to highlight that the online ordering is QR code enabled. So any social media post, any flyer, poster you put around the neighborhood can have the QR code on it with instructions. The customer would, of course, open up their phone app, scan the QR code, and this would bring them right to the Tray's menu. And lastly, I want to highlight that we, of course, can brand it, as you can see here with Chicken Grill Bistro. We can brand it with your logo and your name as well. So it also can be embedded right into your existing website. On the right-hand side, I wanted to just briefly review Tray's KDS, which is proprietary. It's not third-party, and it is truly enterprise grade, and it was designed for some of those large restaurant chains that I mentioned earlier, exactly to their functionality, but it is available and affordable to all of our customers. It supports unlimited routing, order stations, and expo stations. It also has something that's pretty unique that's called automatic load balancing. This is for busy kitchens that have multiple lines. The KDS will actually be able to recognize which line has fewer orders and send new orders there. So it's constantly within a few orders of one line is constantly within a few orders of the other. So no one line is getting overloaded, and you also don't need someone to be managing that manually. We found that has really helped to improve kitchen performance and efficiency. And as I touched on briefly, but wanted to reiterate here, the KDS is touchscreen and or bump bar controlled, both of which can be controlled using gloves, which limits potential cross-contamination in the kitchen. Next, wanted to briefly touch upon Tray HQ. So whether you're doing just online ordering, whether you have the full suite with the kiosk or the point of sale or both, you will have access to Tray's full back-end suite of reporting, menu building. This includes auto-generated emails that contain customizable reports generated in Excel or CSV. And similar to the self-service functionality that I mentioned earlier, that it was built in conjunction, Tray's backend was built with enterprise in mind. So whereas a lot of cloud-based systems just were really built for the one-off location, it was built to set up hierarchy. So as you can see here on the right-hand side, you could actually have, let's say these are all demo accounts because I didn't want to do actual clients for the purpose of the webinar. But you can see here in our demo lab environment, let's say Corey's lab is a business, let's say that, you can actually have hierarchies and have subgroups within that. So one example I like to give is, let's say you have a chain across multiple states. And so let's say we're based in the Southwest, we had Arizona here and New Mexico here, and we needed to make a change to a menu, or let's say there's a taxation change in that state. We could simply make a settings configuration for that entire group rather than having to do that for each location. So between that and a number of other functionalities on the back end that kind of won't have time to review today, Tray is very popular with enterprise restaurants for this reason. Moving on here into the hardware side of things, just wanted to briefly touch upon the kiosks here. Now, the first thing to mention, I usually mention with customers when considering the kiosks, is not to kind of to think outside the box, I guess is the way that I would put it, in the sense that at the end of the day, a Tray kiosk can be powered with simply a touchscreen and a card reader. Everything else, it's the sky's the limit in terms of imagination. So we've seen kiosks that hang from the ceiling. We've seen pole mounted that go onto a table. Wall mounted is another option. Really, as long as you have the touchscreen and the card reader, you have a kiosk. We do provide certain enclosures that we recommend, a few that you can see here. And you also have the option of having a printer as well, but we are seeing a real trend in paperless, especially with our ability to send text and email receipts, kind of mitigate some of the need for having a printer. Now, with the countertop kiosk, one thing that's really nice to mention about this, and something that I think I failed to mention earlier, was that Trey's kiosk can be converted seamlessly between the kiosk mode and the point of sale mode. This becomes important in the case, let's say that we have a DineSafe restaurant that's only employing kiosks, but a customer needs to make a refund. With some self-service kiosks, you'd have to do that on the back end, or it would take time to do. With Trey, you can seamlessly switch modes, switch it into point of sale mode. Only an admin would be able to do that. They could bring up all open checks. They could change the order. They could issue a refund on the fly. And then within, again, 5 to 10 seconds, put it back into kiosk mode and allow the customer to replace their order. So we found that, especially customers that are wanting to do kiosk only establishments, this is something that's very powerful that Trey is able to do, that I haven't really seen anyone else with that same functionality. With the floor standing kiosks as well, we've got a number of different options here. As you can see in the background here, we can do really cool colors. We can do actual custom vinyl wrap with your brand or your logo on the kiosk. And so these are some really nice modern options. These are very heavy, but that lends to security. And we also have, actually, you can see here that this one has a welfare printer. These ones in the back do not. So those are two different models. And if you want custom built, it does take, I think 4 to 6 weeks, but happy to work through the options with you there. And then just wanted to show you quickly one of our standard point of sale bundles. Again, we can do a 10-inch screen, we can do a 22-inch screen, but this is a very popular POS bundle that, again, is very similar in the components to the kiosk, but has a printer, has a cash drawer, and then would, of course, have the NFC capable card reader as well. Just going through quickly, because I want to make sure we have time for questions. A few more pieces of hardware I wanted to highlight. Trey does have handhelds. These handhelds, like the countertop options and the standing options, can run the point of sale mode or the kiosk mode and can be seamlessly turned between the two. So we actually have quite a few locations that do tabletop kiosks, and they will affix them to the counter. But rather than give the customer a menu, they will give the customer a kiosk and allow them to order, and they'll be able to order right to their table. They'll be able to indicate that as they're going through the kiosk flow. These also can be used as line busting devices. So let's say that you have primarily a kiosk only setup that's very much walk-in, but you get really busy on the weekends. You could have 1 or 2 of these handhelds in point of sale mode, and you could have servers go and do what we call line busting, where they go and take orders and send them to the back of house, and really just help to cut down on that line. The KDS we already reviewed from a software perspective, but just wanted to highlight from a hardware standpoint. We either can run it on a touchscreen, and it can have a USB connected bump bar and or a USB connected printer, or we can run it on what's called an Android backpack. This runs the Android operating system and would connect to any traditional HDMI monitor. So if you're looking for a really big screen, this can be a better option, because the touch screens get really pricey if you're looking at 40, 50 inches. But essentially the same functionality, other than just if you're using the touchscreen, then of course, then you have the dual option to manipulate the KDS through touch or through bump bar. And then last but not least is the Trey Smart Printer Pro. This is very popular with a lot of our multi-concepts, our ghost kitchens, as we did in the previous webinar, touched on this. It's actually a patented and proprietary technology to Trey that's essentially a hybrid between a kitchen printer and a KDS. It's very useful for multi-concept because you can provision each. If you have individual kitchens making different menus, they can receive just their order. It will beep for them. They'll have a kitchen display array, but it's more designed for a one-off location, rather than a KDS is more designed to have multiple stations within one establishment. And last but not least, for the hardware side, just want to highlight some of the other key components that are new to DineSafe. Digital menu boards and order status boards. These are fully integrated with Trey's menu. So if you make a pricing change or you remove an item, this will update on the menu. And then, of course, it will display the orders as they come in with the name, the order number, and then also the status of that order. So it will say the order has been accepted, the order is preparing, the order is ready. And then on the right-hand side, we have the automated food lockers. Again, I think this is kind of a cool picture. Now, important to note that this image does not have the scanner, but of course the lockers will have a scanner to scan that QR code. If you're familiar, if you've ever used the Amazon lockers, works very similar to that. And then you can see here that the compartments will actually glow orange if they're set to hot, and they'll glow blue if they're set to cold. They can be switched based on need. But it does take a little bit of time to go from hot to cold or vice versa. So depending on your need, you can adjust. Maybe you need more hot, maybe you need more cold. And then, as I mentioned earlier, these lockers will also self-sanitize after each use, which is super cool. And again, something that we're finding is kind of a marketing component in and of itself to be able to advertise to customers that you're offering the safest food pickup experience possible. So with that said, we got a little bit of time here. I think I left a good amount of time to see what other questions might have come in. So I'll kind of just sit back and see what else you might have for me, Jerry.
Let's see. Got one question. My biggest concern right now is bringing in new customers. How can DineSafe help me bring in new customers?
Okay, yeah, no, that's a really good question. I mean, that's obviously in, making outbound calls and talking to customers that are reaching out to Trey. Obviously, this is one of the, biggest challenges right now facing the industry. Now, really, I would say, like, there's three things that come to mind for me when I'm talking to customers about this challenge. The first, and again, this harkens back to what Ohad mentioned about safety and trust, is that we don't always know. I mean, I guess just to be honest, when I'm making a decision, when I'm ordering food, I'm less likely right now to order something someplace that I haven't been to before. Uh, I just don't know in this day and age. If I haven't been there on site, if I haven't been to the kitchen, I don't know what their level of sanitation is, if they're being diligent when it comes to checking employee temperatures, things like that, right? So I just from my own personal experience, I think that becomes very important. Now, with DineSafe, of course, in and of itself, it is a very safe, everything from the back of house to the pickup is incredibly safe. And then also just by virtue of advertising it, that will pay dividends in showing customers that that is top of mind for you. So I think it, as I've kind of mentioned a couple times, but is a very powerful marketing tool in and of itself to be able to advertise that, you're a restaurant using this product. Um, Secondly, I would say, ease of use. Another trend that we're really seeing right now is, repeat loyal customers having a loyalty program, making it really easy to order. All of this is provided through Tray. Again, I touched upon this briefly, but Tray has a built-in loyalty. Tray has built-in promotional codes. Tray has, the ability to, store all customer data, emails, to do email blasts, things like that. And then again, through Tray, we can generate promo codes that you can use to entice customers. And then also we have the ability, this is kind of a side note, but we have the ability to generate that QR code, which then can be printed out and included in a bag. So let's say that someone places a Grubhub order or they place a DoorDash order, but you want to encourage them to pick up, you give them a little discount. You say, hey, we're making way more money if you order through us. All of that, a lot of Tray's customers have leveraged to great success. And then again, of course, the fact that everything's so automated, so seamless, that if I'm really hungry, I'm going to go to a place that's going to take 3 minutes rather than 20 minutes to make my order, right? So all of these things from an ease of use perspective, I think lend towards bringing more customers in. Another one that I just thought of, so this would actually be a fourth, would be, when it comes to the fact that we can do line busting, things like that, right? Like a lot of really popular places, I know for a fact that based on the buzz that Brooklyn Dumpling Shop has received, that they're going to be one of those places with the line out the door, which is very common in big cities, of course. But having the self-service kiosk functionality and then the line busting means that you won't have to wait an hour for a line as well. So that's just going to increase table turn, because inevitably you have a long line, people will go somewhere else. And then I guess the last one that's been pretty apparent to me since the product team announced that this was coming out was modernization, just in and of it's a draw in and of itself. The fact that it's modern, it's a new concept. Again, just seeing the buzz and that Brooklyn Dumpling Shop has received, and Trey in turn, in a lot of media, people are really drawn to the concept. So being able to advertise it, I think, will bring in customers in and of itself.
All right, we got one other question that just came in.
Okay.
It says, I am interested in DineSafe, but I'm concerned that my restaurant will lose the human touch in quotes, by not having the person-to-person interaction that we're used to.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, and that's everything from definitely getting that with DineSafe, and then even before, just with our self-service kiosks has been an issue now. The main way, and this is based on actual experience with customers, right? So this isn't something that we're just making up or just as a like customers that we have that have had a lot of success with self-service kiosks. Again, imagine often in areas in cities with very high and rising minimum wage costs, really putting a strain on small and mid-sized businesses when it comes to labor costs. Some customers have told us that a kiosk can replace up to 3 employees in terms of labor. I mean, you're really thinking about someone standing behind the cash register. They may be on Snapchat, they're on Instagram. You can still have an employee, but rather than having 3 or 4 front of house staff, you could easily have 1 or maybe 2 if you prefer. Now, the way that, and again, in interviewing our customers that have done this, what we found and the way that we describe it is switching from a cashier model to a concierge model. So whereas a cashier model, again, as I mentioned, they may be distracted, they might be behind, and they're physically removed, right? You think you go to Chipotle, they're removed from you. We say concierge, sorry, because it's kind of like a hotel. When you walk in, there might be someone there greeting you. They'll actually could, I guess, a little bit with be a little bit more careful and with social distancing in the time of COVID. But at least before, they could stand shoulder to shoulder with the customer, help them through the kiosk flow, and again, greet them when they come in. They can't hide behind a register or their phone. And so actually it can lend itself to a much more personable experience. Now, Brooklyn Dumpling Shop has gone very much into a no employees in the no front of house staff, but that is very much their choice in terms of modernization. But there's no reason why you can't have, again, with the line busting devices, with front of house staff, with maybe a point of sale register that they can walk behind. But I would kind of push back on that. I guess I would just push back. It's a good question, but I would say it's not really something to be concerned of, because there's no reason why you can't have people in the front of house.
Great, and that's
and Jerry, I'd be interested if you had any pushback on that or.
No, I mean, me personally, I think the concept of the concierge, I've seen it before, and it works. Me coming from an IT background, I'm familiar with kiosks, but I did really appreciate the offer, the help of having somebody there to guide me through it, because it was a new thing for this restaurant. I think it's really powerful. That's all the questions we had. We'll give everybody maybe just a couple more seconds to toss in any other questions into the chat. But otherwise, it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys, everybody that showed up, and we will be following up via email with any unanswered questions. And we do have here our contact information for OHAD, CEO, Anthony Mera, National Sales and Client Success Manager. So our 2 speakers are happy to answer any questions as well. If you want to take a picture of this contact info, we'll be happy to reach out. And again, this session is recorded, so we will be sending out the recording in the deck later on in the week. Thank you guys so much.
All right, thanks everyone.